if you've been watching the show all week, I want to say thank you. I've appreciated it, and the ratings have been sensational. But I hope you notice that I try and have COVID-free zones every now and again, because honestly, it's dominating so much of the news cycle. We all get a bit over it and a bit bored. So tonight, I want to talk about politics, because that's one of my favourite subjects, and I want to have a serious conversation with a bloke who probably sits on a different political bent than me, but it's all about protecting our way of life and who can we trust to do it. So joining me to have that conversation is journalist Joe Hildebrand. Now, Joe, in welcoming you to the show tonight, I got to congratulate
Yes,
you on the effort that you're doing on 2GB. It's
thank you, sir.
You're making plenty of waves. I like the waves you're making, which strikes me as a bit odd for, a Labor right person impressing, I'm not a Liberal anymore, but whatever I am, someone else on the right.
I'm not sure what either of us are anymore. Thank you very much, mate. That's very kind of you. Look, I think no matter what your politics, facts must always come first. Truth must always come first. And to be honest, I suppose when it comes to wrangling this giant sort of, I know it's a COVID-free zone, but COVID-19 beast, it has probably put me at odds with the traditional left-wing view of the pandemic, but I'm pretty convinced that ultimately common sense and reason will prevail and the alarmist side of the debate will be proven wrong. But I've also been wrong before.
Yeah, I thought I was wrong once, but I was clearly mistaken. Now, let's go to the Prime Minister for a second here. Okay, yeah. He's now trying to rebrand himself as, the freedom-loving Prime Minister. He wants us to learn to live with the virus, which, I happen to agree with. He's told us that there's no more lockdowns, even though that's not really his bailiwick. He's sort of hidden behind the states doing what they wanted for a long time, and now he wants us to believe that he's in control. Are you buying this, or am I just too close to the action to be a bit too cynical?
No, I think you're right to be cynical, mate. I think, I think that Scott Morrison's greatest strength is that he's a very good tactician. He's a very good political warrior. He's very good at responding to crises and taking advantage of situations as they unfold before him. And that's how he got the Prime Ministership in the first place. I don't think he schemed it. I don't think he plotted it out. But when he saw the opportunity and he saw Dutton v Turnbull, he thought, here's a chance for me to come up the guts, to come up the middle. And that's what he did. That's how he's PM today. Again, when he faced an election in 2019, he saw a way to sort of not really stand for anything or promise anything. And again, I'll give a Mars bar to anyone who can tell me the name of a major coalition policy promise in the 2019 election. But by running a pretty cynical, and I say that with respect, angry and negative campaign against Labor, he got up, he scrapped through, and he's a scrapper. Scott Morrison's a scrapper, and that's a real talent in politics, but it doesn't necessarily get you all the way, and it doesn't necessarily breed longevity. And so he's someone, I think, who lacks strategy or isn't too obsessed with strategy, but is very good at responsive, reactive, tactical politics. And I think that's what we've seen all the way through. Say, for example, I know we're meant to be a COVID-free zone, but throughout the pandemic, he didn't seem to have a grand plan to deal with it. He didn't seem to have a grand strategy to see us through to the end, which would have been 2 years from the time it first hit when he first had to deal with it. But he was always very good at whenever problems arose or whenever there was a necessary or an X amount of pressure on him to do something, he was very good at knowing when to fold, very good at knowing when to sort of give in to the assault on him and then sort of turn that around and say, all right, well, now I'm doing what, the ACTU or the Labor Party or the experts, whoever they may be, and turning, I suppose, sins into virtues.
But Joe, let's give him a bit of credit here, right? You go back a few years. He destroyed Bill Shorten on the ground, basically in Queensland. That's what killed off the Labor's hopes, the climate change plans they have. We've seen Anthony Albanese, who I know has got new glasses. He's lost a bit of weight. He's got a new suit, new haircut. He's trying to be Prime Minister. He's probably got a new Akubra too. He was on his tour of regional Queensland, and he has been selling his climate plan. Now, I don't reckon the people of Queensland are going to buy a 2% lower reduction by 2030 than they had at the last election, are they?
Look, to be honest, I think what's happened, and it's probably a benefit to both parties, is that the climate wars are largely over. They've largely been neutralised, and you're seeing a bit of a unity ticket from both major parties. And this arguably represents a greater threat to the coalition because, as a senior National MP said to me, you've got both parties saying we're going to destroy your industry, but one party's going to say we're going to look after you, and that, of course, is Labor. And so you've got this problem now where both parties are basically saying effectively the same thing, but only one is perceived to be on the side of the worker, on the side of the unemployed. So I think that's a valid concern there. But again, Scott Morrison also needs these wars to be over because he's coming under pressure from these, the Climate 200 people in these sort of inner city affluent Liberal seats. And I don't think they're going to win, to be honest, and I don't think they're really going to trouble the scorers that much. They haven't in the past, except in Warringah, and Wentworth obviously was a shining aberration for about 3 months. But they will take up resources, and they will take up time, and they will take up money. And so neither party can really afford to go too all in, can afford to go too woke on climate change, but both need to show that they are actually doing something to both appease their Green Left base in the case of the Labor Party and to reassure people in the case of the Liberal Party.
You make me feel like that last Japanese soldier in World War II stuck on the island. I haven't surrendered from the climate wars yet. I haven't given up hope that we can actually inject some rationality into the debate. But it says a lot about politics, though, today that there is this criticism of both the major parties that they're very much the same now. I mean, we see debt and deficit is no longer seems to be an issue. Government are happy to interfere in the market rather than let it work itself out. And it's like it's perpetuating problems and kicking cans down the road for political expedience. Is that a broader issue that you think resonates in the electorate, or people just living for the here and now and say, what's in it for me, make my life as easy as possible, and we'll deal with the problems, maybe many decades down the road?
Yeah, look, to be honest, I'm a really big fan of what's in it for me politics. I think both parties should be saying what we're going to do for you, the voter, rather than why the other can of soup is worse than our can of soup. So I'm a big fan of positive politics. I think it's largely underrated, but I like a good bidding war when it comes for the vote. But I think you make an excellent point. The reason why we fell into the sort of, I suppose, populist trap, if you like, or whatever you want to call it, but the explosion of populist parties from both the right, the left, and the centre across the entire Western Hemisphere over the last 10 years is precisely because of what you said, that the centre-left, centre-right parties essentially became the same. When you had, for example, Hawke and Keating in Australia, Tony Blair in the UK, and Bill Clinton in the US, I mean, Clinton ran against the Republicans on a Republican manifesto. He basically said it's the economy's stupid. Well, he literally said it's the economy's stupid, and said Democrats are now better at managing the economy than Republicans, and he got elected as a result. And that is good, I think, for a moderate like myself, as a sort of centrist like myself. I think that most problems have a rational solution that both the centre-left and the centre-right eventually come to whenever they're in government. I've often said that all governments end up looking the same. But what happened during those years and afterwards was there was an explosion, firstly, in social media over the last decade or so, and people started voicing concerns, thinking for themselves, God forbid, and getting very angry, and rightly so, I think, that there became a sort of political class and a political and bureaucratic and diplomatic class that spoke its own language, that spoke to each other across the political divide, but a very narrow political divide, and basically sort of thought, well, no matter who you vote for, the government always wins, and we don't really have to explain what we're doing to the dumb mug punters, the great unwashed, because they
the result of that, Joe, And Joe, the result of that is that you've now got a polarised electorate that doesn't trust any of them, so they can say, so the politician can say whatever they like, and no one really believes them in the first place. I think it's damaged politics irreparably in this country, and I hope that you and I will have more conversations about this, sensible and rational, and I'll make fun of you, of course, along the way.
Of course you will. I'd be disappointed if you did that.
Joe Hildebrand, thanks for joining me tonight. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend.